We start this hour in the Middle East, and Israeli Defense Force Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, has warned that Israel will strike its enemies wherever required on near and distant fronts alike, signalling possible future action against Iran. He described Iran as central to what he called the longest and most complex war in Israel's history, accusing Tehran of financing and arming groups that threaten Israel. Zamir made the remarks during a handover ceremony for the head of the IDF Planning Directorate. The warning comes after the Iran-Israel war in June of 2025, where Israel carried out surprise strikes on Iranian nuclear and military sites, killing military leaders, scientists and politicians, while Iran retaliated with missiles and suicide drones targeting civilian and military locations. The conflict ended with a US-mediated ceasefire on the 24th of June this year. We're now joined by Professor Ephraim Imbar, a senior researcher at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, joining us live, of course, from Jerusalem. Thank you very much for joining us. How likely is it that Israel will once again launch something similar in regards to what we saw in June and strike Iran? Do you think the threat is still there, Professor Imbar?
Well, I think that the threat this time of the rearmament of Iran is not as important as it was in June, because now what we are lacking is a nuclear element. The rearmament of the Iranians is primarily in their missile force. They are able to produce a large number of missiles. There are estimates that they are able to produce 3,000 missiles, ballistic missiles yearly. I'm not sure that this is, at this time, a cause for an Israeli preemptive attack. If we see greater threats on part of Iran, of course, such a military strike on part of Israel is warranted.
And the IDF has described this as the longest and most complex war in Israel's history. If that is indeed the case, why is Israel still relying primarily on military force rather than a clear diplomatic strategy? We did of course see prior to that 12-day war, the Americans even trying to negotiate with the Iranians when it came to their nuclear program. Why does Israel continue to strike?
I think your question is very naive. I wish it would be able to solve our problems diplomatically. How can you reach a diplomatic agreement with Hamas that its covenant speaks about the destruction of Israel? How can we reach a diplomatic settlement with Iran that the Islamic Republic denounces an illegitimate state?
I'm talking about Iran in particular.
Hezbollah is similarly serious about trying to destroy the state of Israel. With such opponents, there is no diplomatic arena to deal with.
Professor Imbar, the Americans did negotiate with the Iranians. Of course, it ended up being to no avail. Of course, the uranium enrichment was a sticking point that couldn't quite get to. But however, they did meet and they did have diplomatic negotiations about Iran stopping its nuclear program. Why can't Israel do something similar along the lines? Not direct negotiations per se. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the Iranians, first of all, don't want to sit with us in a room. And they say openly that they are not going to negotiate with Israel. They want its destruction. And of course, America is not threatened as Israel is. We have a case of what it's called politicide. They want to destroy the Jewish state. And they are not bashful about saying it. So I wish it would be a diplomatic possibility to solve the conflict. But with the character, political character of those regimes, there is no diplomacy. Diplomacy doesn't work.
Do you think the Israeli government, people surrounding it, Eyal Zamir, who we've just mentioned, was satisfied in how the 12-day war turned out? Of course, the Americans came in and bombed the 3 key nuclear sites. However, in regards to the destruction of all 3 sites, one can't tell what the damage is as of yet. Donald Trump, of course, continues to reiterate that they have been obliterated, although this is widely disputed. Is Israel currently content in the capabilities of Iran, and that it doesn't currently show a threat to Israel in terms of its ability and its progression towards a nuclear weapon?
I think that Israel has a good reason to be pleased with the results of the 10 days war against Iran. Many doubted that Israel is able to conduct operations in Iran. We showed everybody that we can do it, and we can do it successfully, as it was mentioned in the opening of the program. And moreover, I think that there is a reason to be satisfied because the Americans joined in a military campaign. The first time that Americans joined in an Israeli military campaign because they thought it was important to try to obliterate the Iranian nuclear program.
Okay, Professor Imbar, do stay with us as we have further updates coming